In Chapter 5, Morgan introduces us to the organizations as culture metaphor. The chapter defines culture, identifies the influence of several elements on organizational culture, before discussing how culture is enacted on its holographic nature. The chapter concludes with a description of strengths and limitations of the organization as cultural metaphor. On page 116 of Morgan's text, Images of Organization, culture is referred to as the pattern of development reflected in a society's system of knowledge, ideology, values, laws, and day-to-day rituals. Nation or country culture is one of the first factors that Morgan discusses. He expands on two country cultures, Japan and Britain, and compares them to that of the USA. His examples illustrate the impact that the historical development of nations have on the culture of organizations. Japan's organizational culture was influenced by the role of the samurai as well as the rice farmer, whereas Britain's, it was influenced by the clashes between classes that characterized the Industrial Revolution. The USA's organizational culture, in contrast, is viewed as competitive and boastful. Morgan uses several references from Tom Peters' bestseller In Search of Excellence in describing the Japanese influence on North American organizations. Morgan notes that even though societies are becoming culturally diverse, there are still national norms of behavior that are perceived as normal, leading us to view non-conforming actions as abnormal. In addition to nation or country cultures, various other factors influence subcultures of an organization. The patterns of beliefs of these mini-societies can have a significant impact on the organization as a whole's ability to respond to challenges. On page 128, Morgan points out that culture is created by social processes, images, symbols, and rituals. Examples highlighting the different leadership style of Hewlett-Packard and ITT illustrate the link between leadership style and culture. Gender may also play a role where male values such as drive for results or logical linear modes of thought and action may prevail over female values of networking and community building. The idea that culture cannot be imposed on a social setting is introduced with the discussion of other influences. In some organizations, professional group membership impacts culture as members of engineering, accounting, or medical professions hold different views of the organization's business. Likewise, social or ethnic groups where high status and low status individuals interact with one another also influence organizational culture. One additional factor is that of divided loyalties. People work for different reasons, including social interaction or advancing personal goals. Finally, the impact that trade unions have on organizational culture reinforces the idea that interests of workers and employers may not be the same, and a counterculture may exist. On page 134, Morgan states that shared values, shared beliefs, shared meaning, shared understanding, and shared sense-making are all ways to describe culture. Also on page 134, Morgan refers to the work of Garfinkel, a sociologist who says that as long as behavior conforms to unwritten rules, it goes unnoticed. The nature of culture is in these unwritten codes of acceptable behavior, social norms, and customs. But Morgan also points out that culture is more than rule following, even though rules do help make activities understandable and meaningful. On page 136, Morgan also refers to the work of organizational psychologist Wieck, who describes process as one of enactment. We shape and construct our realities. Culture is described as an ongoing proactive process of reality construction. People jointly create and recreate the worlds in which they live. The challenge in invoking cultural change is that changing a culture is similar to changing a way of life. It takes more than a new slogan. Culture has holographic properties in that each part of the whole needs to be emulated through every other part. Many aspects of the culture are embedded in everyday tasks and practices and are important in understanding how an organization works. By seeing organizations as cultures, we see everything in a new way. As with any metaphor, the organization as culture metaphor provides one way of understanding a phenomenon, but has strengths and limitations associated with it. Please refer to pages 140 to 147 for the strengths and limitation discussion. In summary, seeing organizations as culture reminds us that individuals are involved in organization and overcome some limitations of the mechanistic and organism metaphors that see culture as a factor of design or adaptation. The idea that organization rests in shared systems of meaning and in actions and interactions that create and recreate the shared meaning in a holographic sense makes the organization as culture metaphor uniquely human. References to Morgan, Images of Organization, Sage publication, and all images used in this presentation were created by Laura Bichard or are courtesy of Flickr used under a Creative Commons license.